Welcome to the AB Wellness Podcast with your host, Allie Bradley. As a small business owner of a fitness studio, a private trainer, an instructor, a boss and manager, as well as an overall wellness enthusiast, wellness outside of the studio or gym has been monumental for me, both mentally and spiritually. In this podcast, I'll take you on the journey of wellness from within as we explore facets of ourselves and what makes us resilient, as well as what makes us human. By pressing play, you're saying yes to the journey and showing up. Let's go. Hey guys, welcome back to the... Why did it do that? Hey guys, welcome back to the AB Wellness Podcast with your host, Allie Bradley. Thanks so much for tuning in this week, guys. This is an extremely special episode, and I'm really, really pumped to have my guest here with me. I just want to give everyone just like a little bit of a warning. If you hear just like super dramatic laughter that you're not expecting, you might want to turn your speaker down a little bit because my best friend's on the episode today and it's just going to get real, and there will probably be a lot of laughing, a lot of crying, and yeah, that's how we roll. So anywho, my intro for today for you guys. Basically, thanks for tuning in today. Welcome back to the episode. In the last episode, we discussed things like cyclical living, which is kind of like living by your hormonal cycle. I've been taking into consideration and learning a lot more about that in the last week, and I want to share that, but it's going to have to wait till next episode. And then also seasonal eating. So just eating things that are in season at their peak growth. We have a lot of great farmers markets around here in this area. So shout out to them, going into your local farmers market and trying to get your produce there as often as you can, and just supporting more of like a seasonal diet is something that I've been getting more and more into lately. And I know we talked about that. So if you're interested in it, you can go back to the last episode, which is episode 17. Today is episode 18. And like I said, it's an extremely special episode. We're going to get started on that in a moment. Last thing I just wanted to let you guys know, June 12th is our Pride Day at Chestnut Hill Cycle Fitness. It's a Saturday. We have 4 classes happening that day. We have my Pride Pilates, we have 2 Pride Spin classes, and we have an extremely fun Beyonce and Britney bootcamp class. It's going to be an exciting day. We have awesome swag and gear coming in, and proceeds are going to be donated from the gear that sells to the Eastern PA Trans Equity nonprofit. So we're really excited about that. More details on that to come. But June 12th, save it in your calendar. And if you can pop in on a class, wonderful. So anyway, like I was saying, we're going to kick it over to the episode today and get started. Kate has been sitting here having to turn her head away from the Zoom conference that we have so that I wouldn't start laughing while I recorded my intro. You can look back at me now, Kate. So anyway, like I said, my best friend's on today. The reason that she's on is because we're going to discuss quite the traumatic event that has happened to her this last fall and how that has changed her life. But before that, I just want to introduce you guys to Kate and tell you a little bit about her and who she is. I'll start by saying she's my best friend. She's a lot more like a sister to me. Kate grew up probably a few blocks away from where I'm now living, it's safe to say. So we're the type of friends that'll call each other in the middle of the night. If we need something from each other, we'll literally like run into each other on a side street in the middle of the night while we're both doing like a nightly drive listening to Taylor Swift. We're the kind of friends that borrow each other's things without asking and then get mad at each other when we find out that our Moroccan oil that you spent $30 for is missing. So we're a lot more like sisters, and Kate and I have been very close for, I guess Kate, like the last 3-4 years. We met at the studio at Cycle Fitness. Kate was a client before she was one of my best friends, and we just gotten to know each other a lot over the years, and our personalities really click, and we're both very sassy. We're like Lucy and Ethel. I feel like when people see us walk into a room, it's sort of like those eels on The Little Mermaid. Like, you know that there's going to be like trouble that brews and that we're going to We're going to do
We're
something
scammers.
Yeah, we scam people constantly. One of our favorite things to do in our pastime is prank people. And it doesn't matter if you're like the clerk of a store, like a local store, or you're one of our friends or family members. You've probably been pranked by us quite a few times. And sometimes these pranks lead us into the ER. Sometimes they put us in bad places. But anyway, Kate is one of my tried and true best of the best friends. And today, like I said, we're going to discuss a traumatic event, but I just wanted to tell you a little more about Kate before we do that. So Kate is 27. Kate grew up in this area. Kate, you want to talk? Why don't you go ahead and take it away? Let everyone know who you are.
So I'm 27. My name is Kate. And up until November, I was in law school in New York. I have always wanted to be an attorney. I've always wanted to be a judge. I have my yoga certification. I was teaching yoga at Ali's studio over the summer. Big into world traveling. I lived in Spain for a year. I've studied abroad twice. I have two younger brothers. My dad's a doctor. My mom is a teacher. And yeah.
Fun fact, her dad is my OBGYN technically, but I see other doctors at the office. And go ahead, Kate.
Ali just like pops in when she wants to ask my dad questions about her
my cycle. Yeah. I just call her dad randomly and at 8 p.m. on a weeknight just to say is everything normal? These are the symptoms I'm experiencing.
Yes.
Anyway, so Kate, you live down the street from me now. You were living in New York. You were in your second year of law school, and you were in that direction in life to become a lawyer. Do you want to talk about why?
So I really wanted it's unclear at this moment, to represent kids. Growing up, I have an amazing mom. Her name is Nora. She's a librarian at Enfield Elementary, which some of you might know her. And when I was little, I had a dad who was not so great, did drugs. He passed away when I was in high school. And I think dealing with that, having to go to family court, I spoke to a master who is almost like a judge, but not quite, when I was in fourth grade, saying why I didn't want to see my dad. And that kind of inspired me to want to become an attorney and advocate for kids. And last summer, I was working at the Legal Aid Society in their juvenile rights practice. And I think I will be doing the same thing this summer. But I really want to advocate for kids to make sure that the little people, as my mom calls them, are taken care of.
Oh, I love that. That's one of my favorite things about Kate is that she could really care less about herself. She's one of the most selfless people. And she just really she really advocates for others and really advocates for her friends and her family and just an all-around great gal. So anyway, what we're here to discuss and what we wanted to talk about in this episode is, I guess we could just go chronologically and talk about your not our event and what happened and how it's shifted and changed your life. And I guess the best way to go is to say that last November, you were in New York back at law school, and you had moved back after a summer of COVID and living at home. And we were really, everybody in the world was very unclear this time last year, what work would look like, what school would look like. But sure enough, back in August or September, you moved back to New York. I remember. I didn't want you to go. And you moved back and you lived with roommates. And I feel like your life was taking off again, and you were picking back up on school. And like we were saying, year 2 law school. And around that time, I was getting back into things with the studio and trying to get people to come. And during the terrible pandemic we were in. And I remember we were both very excited about Joe Biden being elected as president. And the day that he was officially elected was a Saturday in early November. And I just remember you FaceTiming me that morning and you telling me the news, oh, did you hear he's officially elected? And outside where I live on the street, just constant honking and everyone's so happy. So sure enough, it's 10, 11 a.m. and my day has started there. I mean, I think I popped a bottle of champagne and my friend came over and we were on the roof and we were partying and celebrating all day. And I remember touching base with you a few times throughout that day to just what are you up to? What's New York look like during this time? Do you want to tell us about what you remember from that day?
Yeah. So, I was getting ready to go out with a friend. Things were wild in New York. I was living in the Upper East Side with two friends from high school, and I could see people on the street cheering. And I was meeting up with a girl that I went to law school with. Uh, People were cheering, parading the streets, and we went and walked the High Line. We're having a great day. And then I went home. And my dad's a doctor, and I remember calling my parents because I just had this really horrific headache, such a bad headache, worst headache of my life. And my parents told me, I don't know, my doorbell just rang. Do you want to take Advil or do you want to go to the hospital? And I didn't want to be dramatic, so I just said I wanted to go take Advil. And my parents said, okay, great, take Advil, call us back in 20 minutes. I never called back. And I feel like at this point, like, you will know better kind of what happened. Did I FaceTime you or what?
Yeah. So around that time, it's like, I think like 9 p.m. It was Joe Biden was taking the stage. I think Kamala was ready to take the stage. So I wanted to FaceTime Kate because, like I said, we talk all the time. She's one of my best friends. And, we were both so excited about this election. And the results. I mean, most people were, I think, and I'm not afraid. This is my podcast. I can get a little political here. So we were just really excited and elated about it. And I FaceTimed Kate while I was at my other friend's house, watching TV, watching the live coverage. And you answered your phone and you weren't really making any sense. And you were like in a darker room. And I just didn't know what to make of it, but I kept you on the phone. And luckily I had other people with me and somebody could call your mom. So we did, and one thing led to another, and you ended up safely, your roommates assisted, and you ended up going safely to the emergency room. And I think that's when it was discovered that there was bleeding in your brain and that you had, surely enough, sooner or later, you were diagnosed with what is called an AVM, which what you and I now know is an AVM. So I guess that was early November, and how long were you in the hospital for then, Kate?
I was in the hospital at Weill Cornell for about 5 weeks. And shout out to Sarah for realizing that there was something wrong with me.
Yeah, shout out to Sarah for saying that. Well, I realized there was something wrong with you too. No, I'm just kidding. I did. I really did. I obviously was like, unless she's drunk, unless she went out and got her shit faced, which you would never do.
Which is unlikely.
Very unlikely. It just seemed like there was something really off about the way you were behaving. And yes, shout out to Sarah. She knew exactly what to do. She's our nurse friend. She was there. She was able to help out and get everything, get your mom on the phone. What does AVM stand for, Kate?
An AVM, if I can say it correctly, is an arteriovenous malformation. And it's basically a tangle of blood vessels. And it happens at birth, and mine just happened to rupture.
So it's like it's in your anatomy. It's just the way you were born. It's just the vessels around your brain happen to be more tangled and more clustered than most people's would have.
And mine happened to burst around my hippocampus, which is responsible for your short-term memory. So my first of all, an AVM usually only affects less than 2% of the population, which I think is crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, and the hippocampus is responsible for term memory. And so my short-term memory has really been affected from this.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I remember hearing this and hearing the diagnosis and not really understanding what that meant, and what it would mean for you. And so I guess the next thing would be, so you had spent a significant amount of time in the hospital, right? And then you had been moved into a rehabilitation center where I was able to finally visit. And how long were you there for?
Yeah, so I was in the hospital for about 5 weeks. I had a drain in my head. I was in the neuro ICU. And then I went to Russ for about 2.5 weeks where I had speech therapy, and I met Darcy, who's my speech therapist there, who I absolutely adore, and Gloria, who was my nurse. And I think that's like the one good thing that came out of this. I've met really amazing people. Darcy, I bother all the time. My favorite movie is Eat, Pray, Love, and Darcy loves Eat, Pray, Love, and we send each other quotes, and we both love Glennon Doyle. And so I've met really cool people. So Yeah, I was in Rusk for about 2.5 weeks, and then I came home.
Rusk was the place where you got your rehab.
Yeah. And then I came home right before Christmas. And then I want to say, I don't know, do you remember when I had to have radiation?
Yeah, that was like a few months later. You were able to get some radiation into your AVM, I believe, I don't really know what the radiation is part of the cure and healing it, I think, to make sure it doesn't ever rupture again. And that was a few months ago. That was like 2 months ago now, I want to say. But other than that, what has your healing journey been like? What are you doing right now to bring back your memory? And really, how have you been impacted and affected by your AVM?
So my mom and I were just talking about that, but I think my life has completely changed. I was living in New York. I was in law school. Um, I am not in law school right now. I meet with a speech therapist who I absolutely adore, Colleen, twice a week, to work on my short-term memory. You know, I do things every day. Like, it's hard when I first came home, it was hard for me to recall what I did at the Allie's like motioning for me to do something. I don't know if that's wrap it up.
I was saying means. How you paint. Now you paint like one of your big activities.
I paint. I was taking a painting class up until recently. But I'm working at the studio. Exercise is supposed to be really great. We got a new puppy, so she's taking up a lot of my time. I'm trying to figure out the next steps. I don't know if I want to go back to law school. But yeah, at the end of each day.
I feel like your process that, as someone who's seen it from the outside and has been there for it, I feel like every day Kate gets more and more with it and more just less foggy. Like, you're just very you'll answer things much more confidently now. You remember and you can recall information from moments ago as well as from a few days ago. So that's something that I've noticed in you has come over time. I think when something like this happens, obviously, like anybody, you would lose a lot of your confidence in what you do and don't remember. But for you, I feel like lately, especially, you have been so in tune with the things that have just happened, and your short-term memory has made leaps and bounds since the incident.
Now I'm going to start crying.
Well, you've come such a long way and you've been putting all the work into it. We talk about this a lot, but when something happens to your brain, it's like a muscle, and you have, your neurons firing down certain pathways. I've learned this through Kate and through, reading about what has happened to Kate, but they don't just fire back down those pathways on their own. It's putting the pieces of the puzzle together and doing it every day. And Kate has really showed up for herself and has really worked hard on remaining in therapy and remaining in speech therapy and doing the things that are good for her to get her back into a place of healing and well-being. And I feel like it's been really beautiful and wonderful to watch that happen for you.
I've had a lot of support, which I'm really lucky. Because I feel like a lot of other people, from my friends to my family members, from the people that I met at Rusk and Colleen, my speech therapist, not everyone has that. And I'm really lucky and really grateful for those people.
Oh, yeah. They're like your angels. And so what would you say, when you really think about it, what would you say that is like the biggest thing that this has taught you, that the AVM has taught you?
So this is something that you're going to yell at me because I'm going to say that Darcy, my speech therapist, told me this, but it's actually Glennon Doyle who said this, but Darcy was my speech therapist in Rusk, and she always said to me, you can do hard things. And I think that maybe that I can do hard things. I never would have imagined in a million years that I would have had this happen to me. I was just living in New York, going through law school. I went through the whole thing with my dad. I thought, all the hard things in my life were over. And yeah, I think it's just that I can do hard things and I can show for myself time and time and again. And, everyone can. You just have to put your mind to it and do it. And people will be there for you. People might not be there for you, but you're going to be there for yourself. And just like you say at the studio, just show up for yourself.
Ooh, hold the phone. Yes, I knew this was going to be an emotional episode, but I'm just so proud of you. And like, just to hear you say those things is like, obviously, yeah, every day, just show up for yourself and put one foot in front of the other and, accept help. I think that's something that you've really taught me, is that like, it's okay to ask for help. Today is my first day out of the second COVID shot, and I feel sick as a dog. And I just asked Kate to come over and walk my dog, and she did. And I feel like that's something that I would not have been able to do maybe a year ago, but I've learned through Kate that it's okay and it's healthy just to ask people for help when you need it. Just ask. I mean, that's what people are here for. People are in your life for a reason. And when you have shoulders to lean on, it means a lot to people around you that you lean on them. And I think that you definitely have taught me that. So through all of this, Kate, what would you say was, how do you typically remain positive? Like, how do you stay in a graceful space when you feel scared or lost or outright angry? How do you stay graceful and how do you stay positive?
I think by just what you said, by leaning on people, by leaning on my mom, by leaning on you, by leaning on my dad, my brothers, Darcy, Colleen, reaching out to people because, I have been down so many times since this happened to me. And, it's people like you who take the time to do something with me, or my grandmother or my Aunt Ann who will, drive me to I don't know where. So just so I'm not sitting at home, like crying alone, your dad, Tiff, like, it's just how I've kind of gotten through this, by leaning on people.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I feel like, again, it's been really helpful to learn from you in that way. And it takes a village. It takes a village for you, my girl. No, I'm just kidding. So what is something, as you continue to regularly heal, and like I said, you've healed in leaps and bounds. I know the listeners don't know you, but I feel like if we tried to do this episode, right when probably even a few months ago, it would have been like a lot more confusing, and it would have been really challenging for you to have grasped what we had just spoken about and then continue on. So right now it's been, I feel like in a lot of ways, it's seeing somebody heal into more of themselves than maybe they even were before. Like, you've been realizing a lot in life, and you've had a lot of like transformative moments, I feel like, and like moments of realization that you shared with me that I've just been like, oh my God, like, you not only did you not know that before, but now you've just become so much more wise, and just so much more grounded, and you see things so differently. What would you think are some of the things that you have learned through this to see differently?
I don't really know if I've become any wiser there, my friend. I don't know. I don't know. What do you think? Can you think of anything off the top of your head? That my path I think I've always thought that my path in life would always be very rigid, and this is what I've always wanted to do, and this is what the direction I was going to go towards. And I think that now I've had to change that completely. I always like to be in control. I always like to know what's going on and the next step. And this has really taught me that that's not always possible. You sometimes just have to let things go. You have to go with the flow, really. So I think that's been a really big deal for me. Colleen, my speech therapist, has said that I should get my memory back around July 4th, but like that might not happen. And that's been huge for me, just not knowing if I want to go back to law school, not knowing what the next steps are. So I think probably that's been the biggest thing for me. The unknown.
Learning how to live in the moment instead of like looking into the future so much. Wow. Mm-hmm. I never even thought about that, Kate. I feel like I've seen that in you as well so much, is that like, you just don't, your body and your anatomy is going to respond how it responds, and you're not really in control of that. All you can do is show up and just taking the space to be in the moment. And I feel like you've been in the moment more than ever, because when we spend time together, I feel like the time that we spend is like very much just centered in the present. We're not really like, it's impossible for you to think too much, or it was impossible for you to think too much about the past for a long time. So it was very just in the moment, and we could really enjoy what was happening in front of us, which is a huge gift. It's a gift to be able to think that way and feel that way. So in life right now, what's something that you're really looking forward to as you progress in your healing and as things start to shift and go down the path of more memory and more healing?
Okay. Well, I'm looking forward to fully getting my short-term memory back. I don't know. I think I'm excited to figure out if law school is what I still want. If, I think about teaching sometimes, just figuring it out. I think about a lot of different things. Allie and I went to Maine, in last spring. Uh, she knows that I'm a big Maine person, figuring out where I want to live, figuring out more about myself, I think. This is a really good example of my short-term memory. I don't even remember what the question was.
Things that you're really excited about, in your future now that you continue to heal. And I think, like you said, like not knowing your path, is no longer rigid. Like you're able to just kind of say like, maybe other things would make me happy. Maybe other things would make me happier than law school, or other things would make me happier than what I thought were the things that were making me happy.
Absolutely.
And I think that's been just like so transformative for you. And it's been pretty incredible to watch. So what advice would you give to someone who's going through a major change in their lives? Not everyone can relate to having a personal health crisis or trauma come up, but we're talking about anything. It could be losing your job. It could be something like a heartbreak, anything that's sudden and out of left field. What's some advice, Kate, that you would give to someone who's going through a major change?
I think probably that you can do hard things and you can get through it. You don't think these things are going to happen. Like I said, I could never have predicted that this would have happened to me. I was just going about my life. And I think for a lot of people, they're just going about their lives, whether it's, an illness occurs or a child dies or they get a divorce. You don't expect these things, but people get through them. So I think that, and lean on people, lean on your friends, lean on your family, and you make new connections. And I think you realize that you can also lean on yourself and show up for yourself.
I love that. So we're going to jump into some of the things that, we ask everybody that comes on this podcast. By the way, whenever I'm around you, I always say, because you say it. Whenever we're around each other, I pick up on your dialect a little. It's so funny. So so I'm going to ask you some questions that I ask everybody that is on this podcast. And no pressure, but I feel like you have
great.
So what does wellness mean to you, Kate Toll?
Well, Allie Bradley, I think, or as I just want to say this, sometimes I call her the devil to people. She's just shoot me that I've said this. I don't even know where this came from, but
yeah, my nickname from my own best friend who's supposed to be like, see the world in me. My nickname is the devil.
I don't know where that came from. She's also really close to like my parents and my two younger brothers. So like,
yeah, we all they're like my family. Yeah. You all like to think of me as like this like, I don't even know, this evil presence. So okay. What does wellness mean to you?
I think it's both physical and mental. Like it's moving your body and feeling good for you. Like for me, I come to spin a lot. It's yoga. I'm also a yoga instructor, but it's also eating foods that feel good for you, that give you energy. It's also mentally helping yourself, whether, for my mom, what feels good for her is praying. Again, for me, it's going to yoga. It's for you, I feel like it's taking a walk. It just, you find what works best for you and that becomes your wellness.
I love that. And everybody's different and everyone's wellness is different. And I feel like I should insert this in the world of influencers where we're all so influenced by other people's lives and what they're doing. I feel like it's so important that you find what works for you in your wellness. What makes you feel good on a regular basis, because it's not the same for everybody.
So that's a quote. It's like in a world of like some things, be yourself, or do you know what I mean?
In a world where you can be anyone, be yourself. I don't know.
That's it. I think that's it.
Yes, in a world where you can be any Kate Toll, be the best Kate Toll you can be. So, Kate, what makes you resilient?
I think just my ability to just continue on. Like I said earlier, there have been so many times in the past few months where I have, laid on my couch and cried or called you and cried, but it's the fact that I don't know, I picked myself up. Or another great example of that is I am so bad at standardized tests, and Allie can tell you how many times did I take the LSAT to get into law school?
3?
Yeah, like I don't 3 or 4 times because I was so bad.
Yeah.
And it's just my ability to keep at it and keep trying.
I love that I agree with you. I'm like, yes, you were very bad. No, you were not.
Yeah, like things might not work out for you the first time, the second time, the third time, but if you have a dream or you want something, just continue. And I think that I am really good at that.
You are really good at that.
I don't let people tell me no.
You don't let people tell you no. Actually, it's a really good one. I love that. You don't let people tell you no. And you don't let people tell you your capabilities. So, Kate, what's something that makes you human? In other words, like give us some of your flaws. Give us the dirty.
I don't have any flaws, Allie, so I don't really know what you're talking about. I think I get really anxious. I can get really tense very easily. Can you think of anything in particular?
Don't ask me. That is like asking me to what if I just listed 30? No, you're perfect. No,
that's so kind of you.
I think you've done a great job at just being honest and I think anyone in your situation would absolutely get anxious and live in the future and wonder when their memory is going to be back and wonder, what's going to happen. But you've been really good at combating that with, like you said, with living in the moment and just kind of surrendering to the moment and saying, hey, I don't know how this is going to end up, but I'm here for the ride and I'm just going to keep showing up. And
here, this is what I wrote. I actually took notes. I'm a big worrier and I'm very critical of myself. So those are my 2, I think, biggest flaws.
And we all have that and we all can really relate to that. But I think you've done a great job. Like I said, it really just allowing yourself to surrender to whatever is going to happen on this road. So what's a quote? I think I know this one, but what's a quote that you live by right now, or a quote that just really makes you happy or you can lean on?
So yes, maybe everyone can guess it at this point, because I think I've said it 50 times, but it's the You Can Do Hard Things by Glennon Doyle that Darcy, my speech therapist at Rusk, would say to me. I really connected with Darcy and I still connect with Darcy. I send her videos and pictures. But I think that I've never been one for tattoos, and I constantly think that I might get a tattoo of it. So stay tuned, everyone. But yeah, I think that you can do hard things. Everyone can do hard things. I've seen so many people do hard things. For me with the ABM, I've seen Allie pivot with this business so many times. I've seen my mother do hard things, so I really think that when people put their mind to something, they can do it.
Oh, I love that so much. Kate, thank you so much for being on the podcast with me today. And thanks for being vulnerable enough to come on here and kind of tell a little bit about your story. I really appreciate it. And I know that this is going to hopefully help so many people and put things into perspective for so many others. So thank you for selflessly coming on and telling us about your journey.
You are just so welcome, Allison.
You are just going to really get it, Kate. Thank you. All right, guys, I'll catch you next week on our episode. Stay tuned. And thank you so much for listening in.